Hey guys, Ryan here. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the new Season 4 SMG meta and which SMG you should be using. If you're looking for any of the attachments for any of the guns I'm going to talk about in this video, go down below in the description and that's where you can find them. We're going to get right into it and we're going to begin with breaking down which SMG is better between the H4 Blixen and the Marco 5. We're going to begin by talking about the H4 Blixen first, and the reason why I'm comparing these two is because I genuinely think they're the two best SMGs in the entire game. The H4 Blixen I think is slightly ahead of the Marco 5 overall, and that is represented in terms of Warzone pros, the competitive community, and all across the board. But I genuinely think that's partially because the Marco 5 is just being slept on. I think if you're an average player, the H4 Blixen is still good, but you're going to be punished by the slow rate of fire. This means that if you miss one or two bullets in a gunfight, whether that's due to their movement, your aim, or whatever, you are going to be punished very harshly in terms of the time to kill, and this is going to make the gun a lot less effective. The Marco 5, on the other hand, has a much faster rate of fire, so this means if you miss one or two bullets, it's really not that big of a deal to the overall time to kill, and you're going to be okay. This is one of the key differences between the two, and it's really kind of tough to decide which one is overall going to be the best for you. You might not even like the Marco 5 or the Blixen in general, and that's why I'm going to have another list of SMGs after I talk about these two. It's just that these two are clearly the meta right now, and that's why I would heavily recommend for almost anyone to use the Blixen. But now we're going to talk about the Marco 5 because, as I said before, this is the other best SMG. Now, which one you're going to prefer is probably going to be personal preference, but the other nice thing about the Marco is you probably have it unlocked, and if you don't now, you can easily get it unlocked by just playing and getting it for free in the Battle Pass. I know countless people who have struggled and it has taken an eternity for them to unlock the Blixen, and that is a huge negative of the gun. If you can't even unlock it, if you can't even put attachments on it, how good is it for me to tell you, yeah, use this great meta gun if you just don't even have it unlocked? That's one thing the Marco 5 has really going for it, and I can't stress that enough. The other thing is this background footage is all done with ground loot, and look at how good this thing is. The ground loot variations of this gun are absolutely insane in and of themselves, and this just kind of speaks to how powerful the gun actually is. I would be 100% comfortable running this exact Marco 5 with me somewhat into the late game, and that speaks volumes to how good the actual gun is. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect. Of course, it has drawbacks because it really does have a good bit of recoil, but when you look at the mobility, when you look at the damage and everything else, it's pretty insane. It really is only bested by the H4 Blixen right now, and that's saying a lot because the Blixen is one of the best SMGs we've had in Warzone history, in my opinion. If you are someone who's just absolutely sick of running into people running the Blixen and beating you up close, then you should probably switch to the Marco 5. If you don't have that Blixen unlocked, I think this is the next close option, the next closest thing to the Blixen, and in some ways, it's even better, and I think for some people, the Marco 5 is just going to be outright better than the Blixen. But what if you don't want to use the Marco 5 or the Blixen? So at number 3, we're going to talk about the Bullfrog. Now, for me, I'm not saying this is outright the best non-Marco 5 or Blixen option, but I think it's really competitive, and I do think it's something that the average player will thoroughly enjoy. I'm going to say the exact same thing for the Modern Warfare MP5, but I'm going to touch on that at the end of this video. I think the Bullfrog, because of its really good headshot multiplier, because of its ease of use, because of its pretty decent mobility, and its massive magazine size, are perfect for almost every player. Now, of course, if you're someone who really is that sweaty and you need the absolute best of the best, it's not going to be as good as the Marco 5 or Blixen, but if you're just a normal player, you're just someone who hops on every now and then, you're just trying to play for fun, then the Bullfrog is more than good enough, and I actually think it's even preferred for people like that. The Blixen and Marco 5 have kind of intense recoils to learn at first, and the Bullfrog, on the other hand, has one of the easier recoil patterns to control for SMGs. Now, as I said before, I do think that the Blixen and Marco 5 are better, of course, but this is more than viable enough, and I'd heavily recommend for people to give it a go. So at the 4th spot, we're going to have two guns with the MP40 and the Armored Gorilla. Now, it's obviously not actually called the Armored Gorilla, that's just what I call it, but when I talk about these two guns, I actually think they're the next best SMGs behind the Marco 5 and Blixen. I just know a lot of people don't like Vanguard guns. I personally enjoy them, but I do get where people have issues with them, but I would heavily recommend people to try out the MP40 or the Armored Gorilla. The MP40 and the Armored Gorilla, in terms of damage, mobility, recoil, everything that really matters, are more than competitive enough, and they're just so close to being as good as the Marco and Blixen that it's really not that big of a deal if you don't use them. I really enjoy these two, especially because they're better for more aggressive players. If you're someone who likes to push people, if you're someone who has good movement and you like to maximize the use of your movement and the high damage capabilities of these SMGs, you're gonna be rewarded. Even if you're a more cautious player, because of the ease of use of these guns, I'd still heavily recommend it. It is super important to have a good gun between 0 and 10 meters in Warzone because so many of your engagements are going to happen up close, and that's why I really like these guns. They're super powerful up close, they have good movement to help you when people are up close, but they also are pretty easy to use, and they're pretty easy to unlock and level at the end of the day. The last guns we're going to talk about are going to be the Modern Warfare MP5, the CX9, and the MP7. The reason I'm grouping these all together is because really, when you look at it, they aren't as good as the rest of the options I mentioned in this video, but the MP5 in particular is the closest thing. I'm not kidding, guys. The Modern Warfare MP5 is almost neck and neck when you're talking about chest damage and you compare it to the other SMGs I talked about, and that's something I really enjoy. If there's any SMG that could really compete with the meta Vanguard SMGs, it's gonna be the Modern Warfare MP5. On the flip side, for me, the CX9 and MP7 are just personal favorites because of how good they feel and just because they're kind of classic guns. I know a lot of people haven't really connected to the CX9 like maybe I have, but I joined Warzone late and the CX9 was one of the last Modern Warfare weapons they added at the time, and I loved it. I just really enjoyed the gun. I enjoyed the whole hype for it before it came out. I enjoyed when it came out because it fit a kind of certain role, and one of the reasons I really enjoy it now is because it's one of the most unique SMGs in the game. It has insane hipfire, it has good damage in the mid-range, and it also has good close-range damage, so it's one of the most... So that kind of makes it an interesting hybrid SMG, and that's what I really like about it. There aren't a lot of guns like that in Warzone currently, especially for the SMG class, and it kind of stands on its own for how unique it is. The MP7, on the other hand, is kind of the left out one of the other two Modern Warfare SMGs. It's still really good, it can still hang, but the reality is there's other guns that do what it does better, and the only reason you should really use it is because you're super comfortable with the recoil, and the percentage of shots you're going to hit with the MP7 is just so much higher than other guns. Now, this is actually extremely possible because the MP7 is one of the easiest SMGs to use in the entire game. It has pretty good hipfire, and it has pretty good mobility. The issue with it now is the fact that Vanguard guns just have such good mobility in comparison to Modern Warfare SMGs that you just feel so slow and sluggish with it if you just don't build it right. And then if you just build it for mobility, you lose a lot of the recoil control and it just kind of becomes a weird mess. And that's why it's just kind of built for specific types of players. If you really like the gun, if you really enjoy it, then I'd heavily recommend it because it's going to allow you to hit a lot of shots and the damage is still more than competitive enough. However, there are better options, and I'd almost certainly recommend the MP5 or CX9 over it. The CX9 is better in the mid-range than the MP7, and the Modern Warfare MP5 is better up close than the MP7. So that's where it kind of doesn't really have a place. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoy this video. I hope you have a good day. It's been Ryan. Peace.